now moving on to panel 2, why Europe's critical industrial ecosystems rely on fuel manufacturing. So in this session, we'll shift the focus to the systemic role of fuel manufacturing across Europe's industrial ecosystem. There are deep interdependencies between fuels and key value chains, such as transport, chemicals, agriculture, and heavy industry. Sometimes capacity erosion in one segment can cascade across multiple sectors, raising questions for EU industrial policy coherence, particularly in the context of the new Clean Industrial Deal and also sectoral legislation. How are policymakers in the Commission and Council accounting for these interlinkages in current regulatory frameworks? Well, we're going to get the opinions of industry leaders throughout these interlinked parts of the value chain. Let me introduce you to them now. We have, down there on the right, Eli Siforu, who is Secretary General of the Farmers Association Copa Cogeca. We have Sotiris Raptis, who is Secretary General of ECSA. We have Orania Georgotsaku, almost got through there, Managing Director of Airline Association A4E. We have Marc Billet, Associate Director for IRU, International Road Transport Union. We have Antoine Hoxe, Director General for Fertilizers Europe. And we have Alessandro Bartoloni, Director of Fuels Europe. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Ellie, let me start with a question for you, coming from the agriculture perspective. How critical are liquid fuels, products, and feedstock for your sector and the larger value chain? And what are some of the challenges that you're facing right now in relation to fuels?
First of all, I would like to thank FuelsEurope for the invitation. I think that apart from being a value chain, we are also an advocacy chain. What do I mean by that? I think that at a moment where we are all aware that the EU is redefining itself, looking to competitiveness, looking to strategic autonomy, all of us as economic operators, our work in Brussels is more meaningful than ever because we need to convince decision makers of the fact that competitiveness, strategic autonomy, climate and environment targets can go together hand in hand. So our work is more meaningful than ever, and I'm very happy to be part of this panel. From the agricultural perspective, fuels are a very concrete part of the value chain for us. Crop-based biofuels are a mature, reliable, scalable, ready-to-use solution that can feed in the aviation, the maritime sector as well, and that can help you achieve your very concrete targets. It is also a solution that follows very stringent sustainability criteria. I need to mention the fact that in the EU, we have a very bad habit of thinking in a divisive way instead of thinking into synergies. And what do I mean by that? I mean the famous food versus fuel debate, which is more and more detached from reality. There is one simple truth when it comes to agriculture production. A crop can produce different strands of value, fuels, co-products that go into feed production, for example. So in the case of biofuels, crop-based biofuels, the co-products, they contribute to food security because they provide a reliant co-product when it comes to feed, which is fundamental for the protein independence and resilience of the EU. So let's talk in pragmatic terms and put out of the picture this very divisive and unproductive way of thinking. the bioeconomy as well. I mean, crop biofuels in our sector and what it can deliver sits at the heart of the circular approach, which is promoted by the Commission when it comes to the bioeconomy strand, which is fundamental. And there we deliver, apart from fuel, feed, food ingredients, cosmetic ingredients. So the deliverables are, and the potential is immense, and we should unleash this potential instead of blocking it with restrictive legislation. When it comes to the challenges that we face right now as a sector, I could talk for hours. uh, overall, right now, and before I go to the more fuel-related challenges that are linked to our sector, I need to say that we are currently, as farming community, in the middle of a perfect storm. What do I mean by that? I mean that we have significant strain in most of the commodities markets. Cereals is a case where we see a downward trend for 10 years consecutively. So in certain member states, our producers are in the red for more than 3 years now. So a lot of criticality is there. We have, and yesterday we were discussing with my good colleague from Fertilizers Europe, the fertilizers crisis. So there is a very severe input crisis that we are facing right now as a sector, energy, but also fertilizers. So a lot of criticality is there. And then we look in a very, we are not at all reassured by the way the EU is proceeding when it comes to the next multi-annual financial framework. It's not only about the common agricultural policy, and it's not only about losing funds, it's losing the EU way of working together and the commonality of our policy, and going towards a direction which is purely divisive. So this MFF is a big concern for the farming community, but I think it's a big concern for all of us, Europeans and EU trade associations that have an EU way of working with the co-legislators. And this proposal, it poses a significant threat to the heart of what the EU means. When it comes to the biofuels and all the limitations that we have there, to conclude, so first of all, the famous 7% cap, which is an issue for what our sector can deliver. Secondly, the administrative burden. So you know very well that in Brussels we have been discussing for many years on the famous simplification. Simplification is not there. We have to follow within the red, but also other strands of legislation, very stringent conditions that pose a significant administrative burden on our farmers. So, for example, batch level traceability is something that is fully unproductive and that blocks us in what we can deliver. We have also new ideas that are put on the table, like the recent delegated act on ILUC, where we see that soy is being phased out, and this is something that we need to battle against, because it's not only about the biofuel strand, it's also about the protein sovereignty of Europe, which is a priority right now. So, in a nutshell, we see a restrictive and not an encouraging environment that impedes our potential and everything that we can deliver for you, for Fuels Europe, for the maritime sector, for the aviation sector. So we need to work together to unleash this potential as a value chain.
Let's move from the agriculture perspective. Oh, you got a little round of applause there. Let's move from the agriculture perspective to the perspective of ship owners. So obviously fuel, very important for you guys. How critical are fuels for your sector? Fairly evident. But more importantly, what are the challenges that you're facing right now in terms of fuel?
Thanks for the question. So I think And thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to discuss today with all the stakeholders around the fuel supply chain, the challenges we all face. And I fully agree with Ellie that we need to do much more when it comes to simplification. We have seen different omnibus packages stuck in the parliament. We need to see more progress and faster. We can discuss about simplification, how we can do things in a simpler way. And there are, of course, many challenges there for the fuel producers as well. The permitting processes, how fast the governments approve the projects, and how fast you get finance. We're aware of these challenges. But the elephant in the room is the investment. We can discuss for hours about how we can simplify things, but even if we simplify things, we will never get there if we don't make the necessary investments. The famous Draghi report found 2 years ago that both for aviation and shipping, we're going to need around 100 billion a year in investments in sustainable fuels. Where this money will come from? And I would like also to point to the ETS money, to the ETS revenues. We are both international industries, and we both want international solutions and international measures. But the thing is that we pay a lot under the ETS. And the question is where this money goes. Is this money invested in the right way? And clearly, it's not. We need to address some misunderstandings with the Commission. The big plan is to electrify the economy, but we need to make it clear that it doesn't work for sectors like aviation and shipping. We will continue relying on fuels. We need to see sustainable fuels available in the market. And this is the main barrier we're facing both when we discuss about earmarking the ETS revenues. We, as the shipping companies pay around 9 billion euros a year into the ETS. And we want to see this money invested back in the industry. Now, the Commission, of course, doesn't want to earmark the ETS revenues because they want to give it to the power sector. But it's also the challenge we're facing. We need to make it clear that we're going to still be relying on the fuels. Food crop biofuels, it's a big discussion, but I think both for aviation and shipping, food crop biofuels are out of the mix in the sense that they're not counted in either the refueling aviation and the fueling maritime. But we have a number of different options to explore together. In this context, we took the initiative and we set up the maritime fuels platform, where we have FuelsEurope there as one of the main initiators of this platform. We discuss openly the challenges, but having the upcoming ETS revision ahead, we need to make our voice heard with the Commission. We want to see the investments back in the industry. And the last point that I know that we're not on the same page, but let's discuss about it and let's discuss what we mean by that. We want also to see the mandate. We want to see mandatory requirements on the member states to make sustainable fuels available in the market. It's not on the fuel suppliers. It's not necessarily on the fuel producers, but we firmly believe that a mandate on the fuel supply will push the governments to use the national ETS revenues in investment. Even if we just earmark the ETS money, we will clearly not be enough. We want also the trigger there in the legislation to push the governments to do the right thing.
Well, another sector where the importance of fuels is fairly self-evident is aviation. Orania, when it comes to, we obviously, as travelers, we feel the impacts of fuel price increases ourselves when we travel, especially lately. What is the importance of liquid fuels products and feedstocks in your sector, and what are the challenges you're facing right now? Some of them might be obvious, some of them may be less so.
I too, in turn, thank you for the invitation. And I have to say, there's comfort in numbers. You sit on a panel like this and you hear everyone's challenges and you think, okay, it's not just me. So thank you for that opportunity and for the chance to have a frank conversation. A bit about the basics on aviation. For flying, for an airline, fuel is about 1/3 of operating costs, 25% to 1/3. In today's world, with the current cost of jet fuel, because of the crisis in the Middle East, that percentage has increased even more. Our roadmap to decarbonize as a sector, the biggest part of it relies on sustainable aviation fuels. We jointly with our partners in airports, in air traffic management, we put out a study on how does aviation reach net zero by 2050, and there we found that SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, is 56%. By comparison, new aircraft engine technology is less than 30%. ETS and other economic measures are around 12%, and just better optimizing the way we fly in Europe's fragmented skies would also reduce carbon emissions by another 6%. So we are intrinsically married, sustainable aviation fuels and the future of aviation, because you are our major pathway to decarbonizing. And while airlines are used to being married to many different people, I rely on engine and aircraft makers to give me good planes, which will, burn less fuel and fly more efficiently and make less noise. I rely on governments to hire air traffic controllers and keep us all flying and reducing delays so that, again, I don't buy and spend more fuel and also burn more emissions. That interdependency exists, but I think we find ourselves today in a situation of chicken and egg, basically. Because the cost of reaching net zero, you mentioned the Draghi numbers. When we did our roadmap, the premium cost, so the cost on top of business as usual, on top of the money that I would have spent anyway to buy jet fuel and to buy aircraft, the premium cost is 1.3 trillion. I say this every time. I'm a law graduate. I Googled what a trillion is. A trillion has one digit less than my last name. That's a lot of zeros, okay? Really. So you understand that the industry, the passenger, you and I, cannot afford to pay a premium cost of 1.3 trillion for Europe by 2050 and still fly and benefit from the same level of connectivity that we have today. And that's where the chicken and egg problem becomes, because that extra cost, it actually increased by 500 billion when we did the maths again in 2025, is primarily due to the cost of SAF, which is costing us more money than we thought it would when we first made the plan. What is the net reaction, the reasonable reaction of an airline? I can't buy as much SAF as I thought I would, because originally airlines said, I'm going to buy more SAF than what is obligatory. It's too expensive. What is the reaction of the fuel producer? I'm not going to invest in SAF because you're not buying. And we're stuck in this little vicious circle. Okay. Now, I have to say we've made progress because we also agreed last year that the current framework is not enough. The mandates alone are not going to get us to a functioning SAF market. That's the first thing that the Sustainable Transport Investment Plan said on page 1, I believe, or 2 maybe. And what I think we really need to be looking at now is how do we accelerate transitioning to that functioning market? What you were saying earlier. How do I bring the investment that is needed so that my members, and I am 80% of European air traffic, so it's not bad as a customer, so my members can sign on more offtake agreements for a longer period of time, which will give those who are brave or adventurous enough to enter the SAF and eSAF market the certainty and business plan to show to their investments and to move towards past FID and into production sites and actually rolling out the SAF. How do we tweak that legislation in order to accelerate how quickly we get there? And it will take instruments that are not forever. It will need little patches, let's tweak a law here and tweak a law there, and we can talk about that later. So for the next 5 years or something, so that we accelerate that transition. And on a point you made, I will agree with you. We're all going to fight. You mentioned MFF. You were talking about ETS. I don't like it in Brussels how we all end up fighting around the same very small pot of money or over money that does not exist. Personally, as aviation, I'm not asking for a handout. I think the solution is very easy. Because, first of all, let me correct you. ETS revenue is not national revenue. ETS is not a tax, okay? It's not a revenue mechanism for any government to then throw down a black hole and let's see what happened afterwards in terms of reducing climate impact. It is a way to redirect money to sustainable policy, sustainable instruments, sustainable fuel. So what I'm recommending in our world, because we have something called the SAF allowances. So we get money back from the ETS to cover the price gap between jet fuel and SAF. An easy way to fix the problem is to just give airlines the option to claim back all their ETS money in SAF allowances. So spend all my ETS money on SAF, on long-term offtake agreements beyond the 2% mandate, so that you go for market mechanisms, you go for investment, as you were saying.
So we've heard from boats, airplanes. Now let's move to the road. Mark, what are some of the challenges that you guys are facing right now when it comes to liquid fuels products and feedstock? Again, some of them may be obvious, some of them less so.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. And also thank you very much to Fuels Europe for the invitation and the opportunity as customers to actually take part in the discussion. Now, we're at a crossroads, and you can measure the importance of fuels for road transport to the time you want the shop's shelves filled or empty. Okay? So that's how important fuels are and energy is to road transport. Okay? Now, one of the biggest questions that my members come to me with these days is, in the next 10-year time frame, what do I have to invest in? Very important questions, and they come from small companies to companies with several thousand vehicles. They all have the same question, because they do not know. We do not have certainty. Now, what are we expected to do? We're expected to decarbonize. We're expected to make sure that we are competitive, not only within the club of 27, but also as 27 towards the other parts of the world. And we have to make sure that we can provide civilian capacity to the military when the going gets tough. The question is, when is the going getting tough? All right? Now, we got to ask ourselves the question, can any of the players in this panel and in this room do it all by themselves? No. You got to work together, and you have to find common solutions, because the interdependency in the chain is enormous. All right? So maybe some examples. Talking about going zero emission. Trucks are earmarked battery electric. That's one of the options. But we need many options. We got an enormous number of mission profiles, all needing different requirements and possibilities. So we need to have the flexibility. So we need to go battery electric, but we also need liquid fuels. And when we're talking liquid fuels, we cannot only look at the fuel producer. We need to talk to the OEMs, to the engine builders, and we need to talk to those people who actually provide the additives to the fuels. Because we have HVO, we have diesel, we have biodiesel, but we need something called AdBlue to make it acceptable for air quality. And that is linked to fertilizers. And when our farmers do not need fertilizers, we do not get AdBlue. It's as simple as that. Now, when we also talk biofuels, and frankly speaking, there is an enormous interest among my members in biofuels and HVO. Because, okay, people want to go battery electric, and those who are determined to go battery electric will do it. They have their calcs all in order and they do it. But there are plenty who would like to but cannot yet. And for those, you need solutions. So you need to be able to start decarbonization, not with your replacement fleet, but with your current fleet. All right? So when you actually talk about the biofuels, there is an absolute lack of availability on the market. And when we talk B7, B7 is fine, but B10 is better. But when we talk B10, you got all kinds of red barriers coming up from the vehicle manufacturers. And you get complaints about engines clogging. But okay, we need solutions if we want to get green opportunities. Now, HVO, fine product. The first panel scared the living daylights out of me because it's not very widely available. And I hope we do not end fighting for the limited amount of HVO being available on the market. So we need more of it. But we do not only need more of it, ladies and gentlemen. We need an enabling framework. So I'm going to move away from the simplification and the omnibuses, and I will call for an enabling framework. Because how many member states actually provide incentives to make HVO attractive? 2, 3 out of the 27? And when you offer to a client a service, the client will want the cleanest service for the diesel price. So that is what is important. So you need an enabling framework. Now, when you look at the electrification, okay, that is the future for many, but without the enabling framework, it will also not happen. And we are not getting the enabling framework that we need. So we actually, what is happening, ladies and gentlemen, is in the European Union, we're constantly beating around the bush, and everybody is afraid of entering the bush and finding solutions. All right? Now, when I talk about decarbonization, competitiveness, and military mobility, imagine 3 horses, and you each connect them to this little round table, and you make them go in different directions. That round table will split in many pieces. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to have these horses go in the same direction to make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. Antoine, Mark mentioned one way in which fertilizers are connected to fuel. How critical in general are liquid fuels products and feedstocks for your sector? And what are the challenges that you're facing right now?
Well, good morning, everyone. And I will tell you the truth, Dave. Liquid fuels, we're not in that value chain. So when I first received this invitation from Fuels Europe, I thought some trainee got it wrong. I have nothing to do on that panel because we are another value chain. We start from gas, so it's gases, fuels. And it's a very long value chain that starts with gas, us, goes to farmers, and it's actually so long that some people here in Brussels think that food comes from the supermarket. It took 3 crises to really Brussels understand that fertilizers and farmers are very important. It's food security, and we need to do something for that and to have a fertilizer action plan. But then I read again the invitation and realized that yes, there are people with me in this panel. We have the food side with Ellie. We have the biofuels, and when you talk biofuels, you need fertilizers to have them. And then we have also AdBlue. Actually, most of the times when I mention AdBlue, people say, "Blue what?" No one now knows what it is. When we talk about shipping, ammonia is also a possible fuel for shipping. So actually, we're all interconnected. And it is exactly what Ellie said also. We're part of the same advocacy chain. And I think our mission altogether is to bring realism to Brussels. Brussels is being disconnected. It's not only food coming from the supermarket, but also fuel coming from the petrol station. What's behind, no one thinks about. And I think this is very important. That's why we're all here together. So finally, I understood why I'm here.
Well, Alessandro, so we've just heard from various sectors that use fuel. What's your reaction to some of what we've heard so far? And what are the challenges that you're facing right now?
Good. So, first of all, it working? Yes. So, first of all, this is the dream panel for me because it is the personification of the supply chain, the interconnection we have with all of you. And we depend on you because without your demand of products, we would die. And you depend a lot on us. So, it is our common interest that we are going in the right direction, that we invest, as Sotiris said, this is key for that. But let me say, what is the opportunity and what challenges we see? The opportunity is that if we have the right transition of the refining industry, it is a win-win for the economy, but also for other aspects. So first of all, we decarbonize. So all your sector we decarbonize if the feedstock that you get is renewable, or let's say, as we say, emits in the atmosphere circular CO2 without increasing the concentration. Another one is security of supply. This is very important. In this day, we see that, but it is a value. And having domestic supply of products, domestic feedstock, biomass, replacing crude oil, most important from outside, greatly increase the strategic position of Europe, strategic independence, if we want. So think of this as a trajectory. Our industry is moving towards this trajectory. Our industry is securing these two important aspects, security of supply and decarbonization, and the benefits that come to the related value chain. But for this trajectory, we need investments. And this is where the problem lays, because we don't have enough. And what is the reason? The technology? No, actually, technology is there. It's ready to be employed. The risk is the uncertainty that we get from regulations. So we have 11 biorefineries today in Europe. I think we are leading in the world on that. But they are not enough. We need much more in order to make all of us ready to, with the necessary availability of these products. Why don't we have more? Because fuels in road transport are banned. Let me just make one specific point. Until the revision of the CO2 standards, and now it's still a lot to say, why investing in renewable fuels if there is a regulation that is fundamental for a big part of the demand of our products tells us your products will be banned, will not be used anymore. So this is one concrete example. Another one, the ETS. The ETS is telling us in a few years there will not be free allowances. There will not be allowances at all. So why investing in converting a refinery if there is no way to have allowances for ETS? So these are all the pending issue, and I could mention more that needed to be addressed. So the regulator has to intervene here to make investments possible. Our industry, I think one of the big asset for the European economy is it's reliable, it's flexible. We have seen a big crisis. Think of Ukraine, a ban on the Russian crude. The first supplier of Europe for crude was Russia. It was replaced. Did the economy see a negative impact? No. Take Hormuz. Jet fuel, big concern on the availability of jet fuels. DG Energy is asking us weekly, and to us and our members. It is there. So there was no stop in aviation, and that we all are pretty confident that the vacation period will also have enough availability. So this is a value. It is an asset for the economy, for the value chain, for Europe. We miss a chair here, defense. Now in the value chain we miss. This is very important. The defense depends on the availability of liquid fuels, especially for the equipment, the combat equipment. Let's say there is no replacement for that. Without an industry that can deliver the dual use, fuels for civil use and the military use, where would the defense be? And it is another critical aspect that we see in these days. We will hear from NATO in the afternoon, so it will be very interesting. So in summary, let me say, we work together. We are here together. I hear of all what you say. Urania said it's expensive. How can we afford that? Is this going to kill aviation? No, it would kill also us. So we are there together, and we needed to find a way. What Ellie was said that about the first generation biofuels, full understanding. We have a particular link between our two sectors because we provide products, you provide feedstocks to us, especially in the future. So that the future is the forestry and agricultural feedstock that will come from us. Petrochemical, now Antoine, you're a sector of the petrochemical, but you know that 50% of the feedstock for the petrochemical comes from refinery. If we decarbonize in a competitive way, you decarbonize in a competitive way. So this is all we have on the table. An advocacy alliance. That is what we need indeed. We needed to go to the regulator and make our voice heard.
So I want to continue on this question of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz that Alessandro was mentioning and its effects. First, just a reminder, you can ask your questions to the panelists by scanning that QR code at the top. You'll put your questions in and I will read them out to the panelists just at the end of the panel. But yeah, on this question of security of supply, Antoine, let me put this question to you because obviously for fertilizers, this has been very disruptive. When we're looking at the decarbonization agenda and the security of supply challenge in general, and when it's acute, like at this moment, are there growing tensions between those two objectives? And how can those objectives be bridged so that they're not working against each other?
Well, good question. Actually, there is a tension today very clearly on fertilizers. The good news is that European industry is producing. So in the short term, there is no lack of availability of fertilizers. That means you will continue to have food on your table. The question is, yes, as you say, what's the agenda, decarbonization, where are we going? And I mean, I have a scary story here from the fertilizer industry. And the problem is not decarbonization itself, it's a target that was put on us. A very prescriptive target to go green, not just to decarbonize, but you have to decarbonize in this way. It's 42% we have to go with green hydrogen by 2030 and 60% by 2035. And this target is the industry red target. I guess you understood it. It's on our shoulders. It's on ammonia. We are number one producer. And the target is 42%. And you know how much we realize today? 0.25%. And by 2030, we will be 0.25%. We will not move. Why? Simply because green fertilizers are 4 times more expensive than conventional fertilizers. And I don't dare to say to a farmer, your fertilizers are going to cost 4 times more. I don't run fast enough. This is the reality. And what is the net result of all this? The net result is, if you are a CEO, if you have great plans, you want to decarbonize, but going blue, for example, or pink with nuclear or other projects, you cannot go to your board and say, I have this great project, because your board will say, look, there is a legislation that says you have to be 60% green, and you say you want to go blue. Are you mad? He will be fired. The net result of this is no one is moving. No one is investing today in Europe. There is only one way to comply with RED. Shut down your plant and import, because 42% of zero is zero. That is the reality. And what is scary is that everyone knows that this target's not going to be achieved. It will be ridiculously missed, and the target is not moving and it's blocking. We have to have the courage to change things in Brussels. And when I say we, it's industry, but also our counterparts, European Commission and member states have to realize this. So here we have a case where we have a clash between decarbonization agenda and security of supply, because it's pushing towards closures.
Ellie, do you also see this clash between these two objectives, and will the farmers actually chase Antoine down the streets?
Well, I believe, and we believe, as a farming community, that this clash is, to a very large extent, artificial. If we go back to the basics, the sustainability question, sustainability has 3 pillars: the economic pillar, the environmental pillar, and the social pillar. And they need to go hand in hand in a balanced way. But there is one precondition, and we are all business people here, we are all industries. If the economy is not there, if the economic pillar is not there, we cannot do the environmental. This is clear. I mean, this is basics. But somehow, and I believe this is the inheritance of the von der Leyen one mandate, we got very confused in the way. The environmental pillar was the predominant one for 5 consecutive years, for a mandate where we have all been through hardship. We have even been banned from, as lobbyists. And I do believe that lobbying is one of the pillars of democracy. It's the responsibility of decision makers to listen to all of us and to take a responsible decision. So we were even banned. So we have the carryover, and the inheritance of this term that opposes the pillars. And the solutions are there. Investments, innovation, you said it, Alessandro, all the solutions. I mean, the EU is very prolific when it comes to research and innovation. We have everything in our hands. We need to act it. And we need a policy framework that stops thinking in this conflictual way, that thinks in terms of synergies, that puts the economy as a precondition for all of us to achieve the transition. All of us look towards this direction, but we cannot do it with unrealistic targets and with a method, with a pathway that is full of barriers and restrictions. So this is not the way. And I believe this applies to all our industries. And allow me to go back again to the MFF, because the MFF is not about a pot where we all dig money into. I mean, the MFF is the backbone of all the policies that the EU brings forward. So it is a fundamental tool that we have to use. You all know that we have the Competitiveness Fund, which is there, and the Competitiveness Fund is supposed to support all our industries to scale up, to invest in innovation, etc. So we need to be very vigilant and to work together also on this dimension of our future work, because everything we will need to do in the future is going to rely on that. And as farming community, we are very worried, because what we see is that these new proposals, they bring all the powers to the hands of the Commission. And they put us in competition to each other. Us, industries, but also member states. And this is a scenario that we need to avoid for the future. So this is also part of the agenda that I believe we should have as an advocacy chain. Thank you.
Alessandro, I wanted to come back to what you said before about how being your dream panel here, having all of the customers here and talking about how all of these things are interconnected. Do you believe that the current legislative process at EU level is taking into account all of these interconnections that we've been talking about and this general cross-sectoral approach?
It's a critical question, and the answer is no. The legislator does not take into account, and this leads me to a concrete proposal for all of us. So we have been asking for some time now the Commission to take a holistic approach to the competitive transition of our industry, because we feel that there are many components that are not there in the regulatory framework, in the way infrastructure are dealt with, the supply chain, and so on. So we think this exercise is needed. The Commission is reluctant, so we went to member states and we say, member states, security of supply is very important to you, and we know that refinery is important, not just for fuels, but for the whole economy. Can you please help us in join the call for this joint exercise, joint study, call it fitness check, or a study focused on the transition competitive of our industry? If this exercise starts, all these industries are needed. We cannot do it alone. So we need to listen to everybody, what you need and what we can do that together. So this value, you call it advocacy value chain, should be there as one and participate to this work. The issue will be the competitive transition of the value chain, industrial value chain related to fuels, because we're all there together. So we will listen to the problem of the cost, of the lack of technology neutrality, of the way feedstock are dealt with, and what the petrochemical and also your sector, Antoine, is going to be. We are not there yet. Can I ask your help in speaking to member states and say, ask the Commission to do that? That's essential.
Well, we've had tons of questions come in on Slido again. I love it. Very active audience this morning. So I'm going to go to those now. The first question, Orania, is for you. So the question is, How can we decouple SAF, sustainable aviation fuel prices, from conventional jet fuel prices? Is it a question of capacity deployment?
Excellent question. And that's actually what struck me with the Middle East crisis. So, with the Middle East crisis, at some point, jet fuel shot up to 130% compared to last year. So, yes, there is a supply. Book with confidence. You will have a summer. Um, but it will be expensive because today prices are down to only plus 63%. By the way, when I was at 130, Brent was 30% up and diesel was 50% up. So, there's a huge delta for the jet fuel. And the thing that struck me was that SAF went up in exactly the same curve, even though SAF is in no way related. It's not the same feedstock, right? So we have a structural problem in this market. We've managed with the mandated SAF is now married to the jet fuel. And I pay a premium on something which, in fact, at least at the beginning, was in no way impacted in terms of feedstock or process or anything. So yes, we have that structural problem, and yes, we should be decoupling it. My members actually tell me that when you buy non-mandate stuff, so obligation today, for those who don't know, for aviation is you buy jet fuel, which is 2% blended SAF inside. So when I go and buy SAF outside that blended fuel, it's actually cheaper. So indeed, we should be looking at mechanisms to reconstruct that market and unmarry those two things. Because ultimately, Middle East, in my view, was a golden opportunity, right? I mean, it would demonstrate to my CEOs who struggle to make a business case for SAF because it is in normal times 3 to 5 more expensive, 3 to 5 times more expensive. eSAF is 5 to 10. It was an opportunity for my CEOs to go to shareholders and go, guys, we need to be investing a bit more in the SAF because look at the price of jet fuel. SAF is actually looking affordable, or by comparison, right? And when we stop doing business as usual in Europe, when we go to an investment mindset, as you said, because we love to make rules in this town and we're all jointly responsible for making super complicated rules that only make lawyers rich ultimately. Let's be honest about that, right? Love a lawyer. I'm a law graduate myself, but, wrong purpose here. When we help use the money that is already in the market to invest in that next best thing, then we're all helping each other. So my plea goes to that, to a bit more creative policy making, which allows us, acknowledges that what we have is not working and that we need to tweak like there's no tomorrow in ETS, in Refuel EU, in flexibility for how I buy and where I buy, and not having to buy fuel at every airport, even if there's no SAF, I still get to pay for it. So that kind of creative legislation, not forever, not until 2050. Now, today, tomorrow, so that the price goes down and the business case is made to a CEO and a shareholder to invest, to give you customers. That kind of thinking, that kind of redoing the market to actually get to a functioning market, because I am a functioning, very competitive market, okay? I have 16 CEOs who, on a good day, are there to cut each other's throats with 3% margins, okay? So when I get to that kind of market in SAF, happy days.
The next question I'm going to put to Mark to get the user's perspective, but if anyone else wants to jump in, just let me know. The question is, how are we going to fight back against the perceived lack of credibility of sustainability certification of biofuels? From the user's perspective, what would be your answer to that?
Well, it's a bit a complicated question, but a very good one. Because when we actually look back 5-10 years, everything has been geared towards massive electrification. And anything that is not electric is being questioned. Even if you can have remarkable CO2 reductions with alternatives, they are still being questioned. So it's a question of informed decision making. And if we want to bring competitiveness back into the picture, we will have to open up to technological neutrality, and the word has been used many times. But it will also lead to the reopening of a whole truckload of rules at European Union and also national level, because everything needs to be broadened. And of course, once everything is being broadened, potentially that will contribute to changing the mindset of many towards certain small or large contributions to decarbonizations which are not electric.
Next question let's see, the next question is for Alessandro. This question is from John Thomas Kirsch from ExxonMobil. Carbon Measures Coalition is working on driving market-based decarbonization via product intensity standards. Do you see it as a viable alternative to the Renewable Energy Directive?
That's an interesting point, because the system is very logical. It has a rationale which is very technology neutral and provides the prices to the winning to the most efficient way to decarbonize, let's say. So it's a different approach with respect to what we have currently in the regulatory framework. Now, is it something easy to implement? This is not, because we are in a system that for many years worked with the RED standard, which are with the Renewable Energy Directive, with the CO2 standards, with the number of other regulations, ETS, and so on. So my view on that is that it is very interesting. There are a number of industries that are advocating for that, and we follow with a lot of interest. We are willing to help and to do our part, but we need also to be realistic that this has to come in the place of a very ingrained system. So realism towards the logic of a new system.
Let's see. So, Cheers, you wanted to come in on that as well?
Just a quick reflection on what we have discussed. We are fully on board to have an advocacy alliance to make our voices heard, especially now that we have the new revision of the ETS, and I think that the new RED will come up at some point next year, and the FuelEU Maritime. But the point is that we need investment. Why? We're losing ground in competitiveness. How? Because we cannot compete with the Chinese and the US in innovation, in new technologies. What kind of new technologies then? We've got some numbers recently. We conducted a study. From our side, the ship owners' side, we have seen that the companies are investing. Our share of the global fleet is around 35%. Now, this number goes up to 44% when it comes to the order book in alternative fuel-powered ships. The thing, though, is that the fuels are not there at international level, not only in Europe, to be fair. When it comes, though, to new projects in the pipeline, investment projects, only 10% are in Europe, 74% in China. And this is also a matter of energy security for the continent. We're going to find the fuels. We're an international industry. 1/3 of the shipping operators operate completely outside Europe. But if it's a matter of energy security to produce these fuels in Europe, and we support that more investments need to be done. We also found that only 5% of the current investment projects are purposed for shipping, sustainable fuels, I mean. And this means we need to discuss openly also the challenges. It means that there is competition among the different transport modes. And in our opinion, for transport modes where there is an obvious solution like electrification, and I'm not saying that it's an easy thing to do, because we live in a continent that where there is a very anti-startup sentiment. We need more investment. We need more startups in batteries, in electrification, in everything. No doubt about it. But there are obvious solutions for our transport. Electrification, because we also need these fuels in aviation and shipping. And the obvious option for you as fuel producers and fuel suppliers is road transport. we need to discuss these challenges. And this is why we also need the mandate, because for us, electrification is not a solution. You cannot fly, you cannot ship the products by ships, maybe for short shipping, but not for ocean-going shipping. So we need to discuss in an open way these challenges and how we're going to make these investments.
Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Lots of interesting insights here. I mean, I think, did you want to come in quick?
Now, this is a very interesting concept because at European Union level, there is a debate ongoing about who gets what in terms of fuels. And indeed, certain fuels are earmarked for road transport, others are earmarked for shipping or airlines. Now, it depends who you talk to, but you get very different stories. The Commission says that's how it's going to happen. Then when you speak with the fuel producers, they say, yeah, but we cannot produce jet fuel without also taking into account products for road transport or for other modes of transport. So here again, the link between the different options and the different sectors is extremely visible. And that is something which the Commission also refuses to acknowledge.
So can I have a very short comment on that one? We also saw that what is obvious in our sector, we saw a clear model shift from sea to road, although the overall target of the Commission is the opposite, to move cargo from road to sea. So we have seen the reverse trend since ETS came in for us. And this is what has been reported by my members that are really unhappy with the postponement of the ETS2, for instance, and the watering down of the CO2 standards for trucks.
Sandra?
On the issue, what are the renewable fuels for, and is there a priority criteria? I think this is the wrong approach. So technically, you cannot make just aviation fuels or maritime fuels. If you tell an investor your plant is only to make aviation fuels, the investor say, what do I do with the rest of the products, with the co-products? So and the investment is not done. So we all lose. Don't take this approach. We have enough availability of sustainable biomass and more recycled CO2, and this will be enough for the part of road that will not be electrified, for aviation, for maritime, and for the industrial use. There are studies from the European Commission, from DG Research and Development that say so. So it's not a matter of competing one against the other. We are there together. What we need, Sotiris, is what you said in the beginning, investments. Investment is the matter. And the investor wants to know that there will be a market for all of the products that he makes from the biomass, recycled CO2. This is the key point.
I have a feeling we could talk about this for much longer, but we do have to move on to the fireside chat now. I want to thank this dream panel for some excellent insights from all the different parts of the sectors that use the fuels. How about a round of applause for them?